Namaste. Aloha. Welcome to the Shri Ishopanishad class. My name is Janapatidas. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please accept my respects. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel yet, please take the opportunity to subscribe and comment on the videos that I post there. If you know anyone who is interested in hearing about Krishna's pastimes, please encourage them to subscribe to this channel. We have quite a plethora of videos on this channel, and so I would like to take the opportunity to offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, Jagat Guru Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada, and I place my head at his lotus feet forever and ever, that I may have the great fortune to be able to transmit or share what he has shared with me. And of course, I'd like to offer my respectful obeisances to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We've been reading through these different mantras in the Shri Ishopanishad, reading from the purports of our dear spiritual masters, and we will continue. But first, we will chant Krishna's names. Prime benediction for humanity at large. Just chant Krishna's names. Just take shelter. Just love Krishna. Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So, welcome again. We are moving forward in the Shri Ishopanishad, translated and purported upon by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and the 18 Pearls of Vedic Wisdom, the commentary upon the same Shri Ishopanishad by His Divine Grace, Jagat Guru Siddhaswarapananda Paramahamsa. And as always, we are going to read through up to Mantra 10, starting with the invocation. Jai Srila Prabhupada. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete, and because He is completely perfect, all emanations from Him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as a complete whole. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete by itself. And because He is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from Him, He remains the complete balance. Mantra 1. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself, which are set aside as his quota, and one must not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. Mantra 2. One may aspire to live for hundreds of years if he continuously goes on doing work in that way, because that work will not bind him to the law of karma, and there is no alternative to this way for man. Mantra 3. The killer of the soul, whoever he may be, must enter into the planets known as the worlds of the faithless, full of darkness and ignorance. The personality of Godhead, although fixed in his abode, is more swift than the mind, and can overcome all others running. The powerful demigods cannot approach him, although in one place he has control over those who supply the air and rain. He surpasses all in excellence. Mantra 5. The Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. He is far away, but He is very near as well. He is within everything, and again, He is outside of everything. Mantra 6. A person who sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord and sees all entities as His parts and parcels, and who sees the Supreme Lord within everything, never hates anything nor any being. Mantra 7. One who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks in quality with one with the Lord becomes a true knower of things. What is there as illusion or anxiety for him? Mantra 8. Such a person who must know, in fact, the greatest of all, who is unembodied, omniscient, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminate, the self-sufficient philosopher who is awarding everyone's desire since time immemorial. Mantra 9. Those who are engaged in the culture of nescient activities shall enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Worst still are those engaged in the so-called culture of knowledge. Mantra 10. Anyad evahur vidyaha Anyadahur avidyaya iti shushruma dilanam yenashtad viksha chakshire. Anyat, different. Eva certainly. Ahu said, Vidyaha, by a culture of knowledge. Anyat, different. Ahuaha said, Avidyaya, nescience. Iti, thus. Shushruma, heard. Dhiranam, from the sober sect. Yea, those, naha, to us, tat, that. Vicha chakshire, explained. Translation, Mantra 10. The wise have explained to us that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge, and it is said that a different result is obtained from the culture of nescience. Pretty powerful statement. So we have the culture of knowledge, the knowledge that is handed down through disciplic lineage by spiritual masters from Shri Krishna is the culture of knowledge. There's so much kind of knowledge in this world, and we've talked about this age that we live in, which is the age of information. But what kind of information are we really receiving from the World Wide Web and everything that is related to it, including social media? The culture of nescience. Nescience comes from two Latin words, ne, which means not, and siente or sinte, which means ignorance or truth. Nescience is actually ignorance, because it also refers to an awareness. Sometimes the root word is found in like words like consciousness, and there is an awareness. But when we're living in a culture of nescience, of darkness, of ignorance, where the truths are not actually truths after all, but mostly speculation by people who call themselves very learned, or partial truths, but not the absolute truth. The culture of knowledge discussed here, and this is why the wise, the pure devotees of Krishna, the great saints and sages of the past, including Lord Jesus Christ, have explained the difference between materialism and spiritual knowledge. So here it's explained that by obtaining the culture of knowledge, you get one result. You know, a culture is like a mixture, right? You know, a mixture. Culture is cultivating. The word cultivating. It's a mixture of something that is, you know, we talk about culture, the society's culture, and the society's culture is a mixture of everything that goes on in that society, whether it's from social media or the news or whatever. You know, every society has a different kind of culture, a different mixture. People come in from different countries, they bring their own flavor of a culture. And so this culture of knowledge is a mixture of, which is not really a mixture actually, because it's only pure knowledge, the culture, the cultivation of knowledge, the Vedic truth and the scriptures thereof. And then the culture of nescience, or darkness, is that which takes us away from Krishna. It may tell us, you know, ways of perfecting our material life and our material existence and sense enjoyment, but that's really a culture of darkness, because that puts us in further ignorance about who we really are. It just reinforces that false belief that we are the body and we are the mind, and we're here to try to enjoy our life as much as we can individually, really. Purport: the culture of knowledge can be practically conducted in the following way. As is advised in the Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter, there it is said, number 1, one should become a perfect gentleman himself and learn to give proper respect to persons other than himself. So we're going to go through these listings from the Bhagavad Gita and the culture of knowledge and you'll see that when you are taking part of the culture of knowledge, the instructions of the spiritual masters, the scriptures, the chanting of Krishna's names, you'll find that these things naturally happen. So one doesn't have to strive to do things individually. I've done number 3, now I can do number 5. It's like this culture of knowledge purifies the heart and makes it so that you see who you really are and what your purpose is, what your relationship and love is with Krishna. And therefore, to become a perfect gentleman or lady or whatever, to give respect to others, that's instructed by Lord Chaitanya, and we do that. And we say that prayer as instructed by our spiritual master every day. To say Lord Chaitanya's third prayer, one should chant the holy names of the Lord in a humble state of mind, feeling oneself to be lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to give all respects to others without expecting respect in return. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy names of Krishna constantly. Number 2, one should not pose himself as a religionist simply for name and fame. So we've been touching upon this in different talks we've had and things we've read. You don't put on the garb and become a religious person. It's about your consciousness. One should not become a source of anxiety to others by the actions of his body, mind, or words. This is a really great thing to have on the wall. I mean, even if you were we live in a world full of conflict and frustration and anger and, polarizing sides of political divide and people kind of stepping in and creating anxiety for the other side because they're wrong, and, you got to sock it to them and create anxiety. But even in social media, it's like, why become a source of anxiety to other through body, mind, or words? Why not try to help people spiritually through love and compassion? Number 4, one should learn forbearance even if there is provocation from others. So it's a very challenging thing, especially if you're on social media, to if somebody says something to you and it's like, and that's the way they make these social media platforms. They want you to react and keep the interaction going so that they can manipulate you and sell stuff to you. And just, there's a lot I could say about that. So you shouldn't, even if you're provoked about others, learn forbearance, to be intelligent, to think, if I say something that is going to be trying to get them, is that going to solve the problem of this issue? Or is it better just I walk away from it? Or, say, hey, a little bit, can we give it just a minute? We're kind of heated. Can we just cool down so we can have a civil discussion? Number 5, one should learn to avoid duplicity in his dealings with others. So don't be duplistic. One, and that could be, these all could be lectures, just one, a talk, the whole thing about how being duplistic, and you should never ever be duplistic with Krishna and your spiritual master. Say one thing and do another. Number 6, one must have a bona fide spiritual master who can lead him gradually to the stage of spiritual realization, and to such an acharya or spiritual master he must submit himself with service and relevant questions. So we are doing a class in the Bhagavad Gita, and that's and eventually I'll probably do the Srimad Bhagavatam, and this is how spiritual knowledge is delineated, is disseminated and shared, is from spiritual master to student, handing down the absolute truth, unchanged, and depending on the time, it doesn't matter. Nothing is really changed. Same spiritual truth. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 32, Krishna tells Arjuna one should learn the absolute truth by approaching a spiritual master, render service unto him, and humbly submit to him, because the self-realized soul can impart the absolute truth to you because they have seen the truth. And this is why this is a key element. Number 8, one must be fixed up in the tenets of revealed scriptures. Number 9, one should completely refrain from practices which are detrimental to the interest of self-realization. So, in spiritual life, the most important way to grow your garden, right? Your spiritual garden is to water it with the holy names of Krishna, which is extremely powerful. There are many, many other ways, prasadam, hearing from your spiritual master, applying things in your life. But when you're gardening, you don't pull out, weeds, one weed, and then drop the pot of seeds into the soil. So ideally there are certain rules and regulations that you should, sometimes there are do's and don'ts of, what you do in your spiritual life. It's kind of like my dear Shri Prabhupada has also made the analogy of these elephants, right? They bathe their body very nicely and clean and whatever, and they walk over to the dirt and throw the dust on their back after they've watered. And this is like spiritual master. With spiritual life, you don't, after you've been practicing things that will purify you, engage in things that will cover you up again. So we try to avoid these things that are detrimental. We follow the rules and that our spiritual master has instructions that he's laid out for us to do, and the do's and don'ts, right? And initially, when you come into chanting, come into contact with chanting and the practice of sadhana bhakti, and all this, whatever, just coming to a chant, right? Like for my example, for me, I was a drug user. I didn't really drink anymore, but, I was pretty sinful, I had a sinful life, but there was no expectation for me to just like, oh, you got to do all these things. Mainly was just hear and chant, and that's powerful. That powerful is so powerful to give you a taste, to make it so that you don't really want to drop those things that, and if you've been practicing for a while and you're still holding on to these things, it's kind of like you're pulling out the weeds of your garden and you're planting weeds again into your garden. And it's actually offensive to sin on the strength of the holy name. So that's a thing that we should practice in our spiritual life, tending our spiritual garden, keeping the weeds out of our garden. Number 10, one should not accept more than what he requires for the maintenance of the body. So this goes along with the mantra 1 of everything animate, inanimate, belonging to God, and we accept our quota. We don't strive, as Srila Rupa Goswami also states in the Ishopanishad, the Nectar of Instruction. Sorry, getting my scriptures mixed up. He talks about also the same kind of thing, that one should not overly over-endeavor for material goods, because the reality is karmically you will receive what you will receive. To waste your time trying to go after things is not accepted here. One should not falsely identify himself with the material covering of the gross body, nor consider as his own those who are related with his body. So this, of course, first thing we learn is self-realization. Aham brahmasmi, I am not my body, I am not my spirit, I am not my mind. These things that go on in my mind are a covering. The things that go in my body are also a covering. And it has really nothing to do with the spirit soul. One should always remember that so long, this is number 12, one should always remember that so long as he has a material body, he must face the miseries of repeated birth, death, old age, and disease. We only experience that life to life, but we've been going through this over and over again in reincarnation. Birth, disease, old age, and death, over and over again. And when you're young, in a young body, you don't really fully experience that unless you have some kind of disease or something early on, but it becomes much more apparent after you've past your 40s and you kind of feel it just gradually. My body is 56, and that's still pretty young. More to come. You try to do what you can to keep your body together, but there is no use in making plans to get rid of these miseries in the material body. There's really no use to, it's good to maintain your body and try to keep it healthy for the service of Krishna, but we have to understand that this is going to fall apart and we are going to die. Our body is going to die. It's sooner or later, it will happen. It's inevitable for everyone. Every living being experiences this in the material world. The best thing is to find out the means by which one may regain his spiritual identity. So this should be the main purpose of our life, really. Not just keeping ourselves in this perpetual cycle of birth, disease, old age, and death, and the pain that goes along with it, being ripped apart from the relationships that you form in this world, the things that you obtain, the talents that you get. Number 13, one should not be attached to more than the necessities of life required for spiritual advancement. So this goes along with the other one. One should not be more attached to wife, children, and home than is ordained in the revealed scriptures. So this is a tricky one, right? I think Jesus Christ also said something about, leaving your parents and your wife and your children, and because those, while they can ideally in an ideal situation be an asset to your journey and your spiritual life, if you're helping them come back to Krishna and learn about their spiritual identity, helping them in their spiritual journey, but it is a tricky stage in the ashram, varnashram system. When we become householders and have children and homes and money, and this becomes very difficult to focus on your spiritual life at this stage. But it doesn't have to be. It can be actually just part of your spiritual life. That's why it's an ashram. It's an ashram. It's supposed to be a spiritual marriage, spiritual state of your life. 115, one should not be happy or distressed in regard to the desirables and undesirables created by the mind. Happiness and distress. So Srila Prabhupada has made this statement of like kids on a seesaw. We will be up and we will be down. We'll be up and we'll be down. So good things are going to happen and bad things are going to happen materially. We don't become overly attached to either or. Woohoo, I'm up high, or woo, mine's the bummer, We just stay equiposed in our spiritual, chant Krishna's names, engage in our service. Number 16, one should become an unalloyed devotee of the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna and serve him with rapt attention. Number 17, one should develop a feeling for residing in a secluded place with a calm and quiet atmosphere favorable for spiritual culture, and thus avoid congested places where the non-devotees congregate. So, realistically, not everybody can live in a very beautiful place. I'm fortunate I live in Hawaii, so this is a beautiful place, although it has a lot of downsides to it, of course, but we can chant Krishna's names, and we can do the best we can. We also, Lord Chaitanya has instructed us to take the chanting of Krishna's names in every town and village. But here it's stated that try to avoid congested places where there are a lot of non-devotees, because unless you're very spiritually strong, it's better to have a community of people like-minded doing the same thing to help cultivate, because it's easy to be drawn away, hey, that's kind of, no, you chant Krishna's name, oh, well, how about this? Come out here, have a beer. Have a beer at the bar. I know this lady who's gonna, it's just like that, that's how people are in the material world. They just want to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. These 18 items form a gradual process for developing real knowledge. Except for these 18 items, all other items, whatever, are grouped within the category of nescience. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, a great acharya, said that all forms of material knowledge are merely external features of the illusory energy. And by culturing them, one becomes no better than an ass. So we've talked about the ass who just, may know a lot, learn a lot, material knowledge of how to accumulate a good pile of grass and trying to get sex life from the she-ass, but gets kicked in the face and gets whipped by their master at their work. So, yeah, what good is knowing? I mean, there are people who spend their whole life studying some African beetle in a rainforest and its mating propensities, and they write papers on it, and they may know a lot about the particular lifestyle of that beetle, but what good does that really do them? What good does it really do them? I think about it, the things that people waste their lives on, from a kind of like artsy sort of whatever, or scientific, you might think, well, that's really cool, we're learning about this thing. What was another really funny one that I learned recently? Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess I don't know if I'm supposed to get banned on YouTube for saying things like this, but this lady I read about who was an art student, and as a final for her art class, she was supposed to cast a mold on something to make an art piece. And so she decided she was going to become a groupie, and this was the 60s, right? So she was hooking up with all the Rolling Stones and all these guys, Jimi Hendrix, and and was having sex with them and molding their penises. So that's what she was known for, and she went through her whole life doing this and casting different rock stars' penises as molds, and that's what she cultivated. That was her culture of nescience. She probably knew how to do it really well and make, do all the molds and whatever. It's like, I know, I'm like, I'm going to get a red flag from YouTube for that, talking about penises and stuff, So, but the point being is that, there are so many kinds of knowledge, but if, just like Bhaktivedanta says, if you're not cultivating the culture of knowledge, of true absolute knowledge, absolute truth, the Vedic truth, what's stated here in the 18 points of the chapter 13 in the Bhagavad Gita, which eventually we'll get to in our Bhagavad Gita class, then it's a culture of nescience, of ignorance, of darkness, of illusion, just reinforcing that we are our body and our mind, we are our skin colors, we are our sexual identities, we're tall and fat and short, we're white, we're black, whatever. This is what the culture of nescience, and you find it thriving in the modern age, the culture of nescience. There's lots of information, there's lots of knowledge, so-called knowledge about that, to look up on the internet, to lead you further into the cave of ignorance. Here in Shri Ishopanishad, the same principle is repeated. Material advancement of knowledge means actually converting a human being to the status of an ass. It's great. So you're basically becoming a donkey, And I think that's why there was a thing in the Pinocchio story where people were turning into monkeys, or into, not monkeys, into donkeys, because they were just getting more and more enamored by the material enjoyment of these carnival city. Some materialistic politicians, under the cover of spiritual garments, do not decry the present system of civilization as satanic, but unfortunately they do not care for the culture of real knowledge, which is described in the Bhagavad Gita, and therefore they cannot change the satanic situation. So, in other words, this is a very interesting thing, because the so-called Church of Satan is basically anything goes hedonistically. If you want to do it, then just do it. And so therefore, when you say the modern culture is a satanic situation, that's basically it, because that's their philosophy. Now, maybe there's not a real Satan or a real devil, or this idea of people dressing up and it's just like theater, but the core of the hedonistic lifestyle is selfishness, self-centered, me only, and to the degradation of everyone around you. In the modern setup of things, even a boy thinks himself self-sufficient, and pays no respect to elderly men. That's really true about now. The younger generation. I work with kids in the schools, and they are just more and more, they're being taught by their social media videos and whatnot to be snarky and disrespectful and try to undermine and even sometimes violent against the older generation. Whereas in traditional societies all around the world for eons, the younger generation was receiving the wisdom from the elder generation because the elder generation had received it from their elder generation and also had the lifetime of experience to see this. This is being broken in modern society, whereas the elderly are rejected, but they're also just older versions of children in their hedonistic mentality. Thus, due to the wrong type of education imparted by our universities, and boy, I could say a lot about that, boys all over the world have become the cause of headache to elderly people, boys and girls. Therefore, Shri Ishopanishad warns very strongly that the culture of nescience is different than that of knowledge. The universities are, so to speak, centers of nescience only, and therefore the scientists are busy discovering lethal weapons to wipe out the existence of other countries. The scientists, they spend a lot of time figuring out how to put poison in our food and try to blow up other countries better. University students today are not given instructions on the regulative principles of brahmacharya, the spiritual process of life, nor do they have any faith in their respective scriptural injunctions. In fact, actually, there is no real Bhagavad Gita class. There is no spiritual classes. There's no instructions in universities about how to live a spiritual life. None. Religious principles are taught for the sake of name and fame only, and not for the matter of practical action. There are better ways to make polished animals. Therefore, there is animosity not only in the social and political fields, but in the field of religion as well. Nationalism in different parts of the world has also developed on account of this nescient education of the people. They have no information that this tiny earth is just a lump of matter floating in immeasurable material space along with many other lumps. In comparison to the vastness of space, these material lumps are like dust particles in the air. That was what I was talking about the other day, was just the funniness. I always kind of laugh when people bother themselves with such ridiculous opinions about things, this and that. Should we vote for this person? Should we vote for that person? Is this person a fascist? Is this person a communist? It's and you're just floating, driving around in little tin cars around on this little lump of clay, floating around a bunch of other lumps of clay in this solar system, in this universe, in the galaxy, in the universe, and with multiple universes, according to the Vedas, with all kinds of living entities just doing the same thing, trying to play God out here, completely ignorant of what's going on. It's funny. It's sad. But this is why we give people names of Krishna. Because God kindly made these lumps of matter complete in themselves, and they are perfectly equipped with all necessary arrangements for floating on in space. Our Sputnik drivers are very proud of their achievements, but they do not look to the supreme driver of these gigantic Sputniks called planets. There are innumerable suns occupying space with innumerable arrangements of planetary systems. We small creatures, as the infinitesimal parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are trying to dominate these unlimited planets by repeated birth and death, but are generally frustrated by old age and disease. The span of human life is scheduled for about 100 years, although it is gradually decreasing to the limit of 20 or 30 years of life. Thanks to the culture of nescient education, befooled men have created their own nationalisms within these planets in order to grasp at sense enjoyment for these few 20 or 30 years. Such foolish people are drawing up various plans to make some demarked portion of Earth as perfect as possible, which is ultimately ridiculous. And for this purpose, each and every nation has become a source of anxiety for the others. More than 50% of their energy is spoiled in defense measures, with no caring for the real culture of knowledge, and they are falsely proud of becoming advanced in both material and spiritual knowledge. Shri Ishopanishad warns of this faulty mode of education, and the Bhagavad Gita gives instructions as to the development of real knowledge. In this mantra, there is a hint that the instruction of vidya, knowledge, must be gained from the dhira. Dhira means undisturbed, not disturbed by material illusion. Sober person is another word. This is also in the this word is also in the Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse 13, which says, for the embodied soul there is neither birth, get that right. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at time of death. And so the dhira, the self-realized soul, the sober person who has the vision to see that, the devotee, they're not bewildered by such a change because they know what's going on. They're not undisturbed, they're not disturbed by material illusion. That's what's said here. They can see right through the illusion. No one can be undisturbed until he has perfect spiritual realization. When one is perfectly spiritually realized, he has no more hankerings for anything acquired, nor does he lament for anything lost. Such a dhira has realized that the material body and mind which he has acquired by chance, material association, are foreign elements, and therefore he simply makes the best use of a bad bargain. I love that saying. So, pretty awesome. The Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada was saying, it's just what we got. It's what we've been delivered. We use the best, we got, just use it as we got it, As it starts to crap out on us, we don't freak out. Things are not perfect with it. We don't freak out. We just accept it for what it is. We use it in the purpose of serving our spiritual master in Krishna as best as we can. The material body and mind are bad bargains for the spiritual living entity. Yeah. We gave up what we gave up to have this, or if we're in another body, in other lives, where we're dogs or mosquitoes, or, that's a bad bargain. Be a maggot and a piece of shit, that's some bad bargain. The living entities has different functions in the living world, but this material world is dead. It's dead. And it's been described in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, that the spiritual energy, the living entities, are sustaining the universe by their presence, because they are making things alive in this material world, because they are alive, but the actual material universe is dead without the living entities. There is no... Just like the body, the material body is dead without the living entity present within it. Right now, it seems like the body is doing all these things by itself, but it's not. It's almost like a puppet show. The living entity has desires. He's very attached to, particular things, but those desires are acted out like a puppet, And when it's time for that living entity, because the body is falling apart and it can't stay there, like the hermit crab. Oh, the house was too small. What's that, Eric Carle? The hermit crab story, the one who did The Hungry Caterpillar. He talked about his adventure of this hermit crab. Going from things, and as he grows, the house starts to fall apart, it gets too crowded, he has to go to another shelter. And the hermit crab takes shelter of shells and things like that, right? So I really want to do this. I think I want to do videos where I make spiritual commentary on children's books, because I think that is a even though it probably wasn't for the author, it does have spiritual implication. So we're talking about the material world is dead. As long as the living sparks manipulate the dead lumps of matter, the dead world appears to be a living world. But actually it is the living souls, the parts and parcels of the supreme living being which move the world. The Dhiras are those who have come to know all these facts by hearing of them from superior authorities. And that's how our spiritual knowledge is attained. Hearing it from our spiritual master and repeating it and applying it in our life. And who have realized them by following the regulative principles. To follow the regulative principles, one must go under the shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. We take shelter. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can obtain pure devotional service. The transcendental message comes down from the spiritual master to the disciple with the regulative principles, and not in the hazardous way of nescient education. It's dangerous. Material education is dangerous. One can become a Dhira only by such submissive hearing from the personality of Godhead. The perfect disciple must be like Arjuna, and the spiritual master must be as good as the Lord himself. These are the processes of learning Vidya, knowledge, and from the Dhira, the undisturbed. Adhira, one who has not undergone the training of a Dhira, cannot be an instructive leader. So we have plenty of those. And they lead society astray all the time. Modern politicians who pose themselves as Dhiras are themselves Adhiras. One cannot expect perfect knowledge from them. They are busy with their own remuneration in dollars and pounds. How can they lead the mass of people to the right path of self-realization? One must hear submissively from the Dhira in order to get actual education in life. Wow, that's pretty amazing. So I'm going to read real quickly Jagaguru Siddhaswarapananda purport on this, mantra 10. Find it here. Okay. The wise have explained that one result is derived from the culture of knowledge and that a different result is obtained from the culture of nescience. Purport by His Divine Grace Jagaguru. For one who lives a hedonistic life, a life in which nescience is cultivated, the results are envy, anger, greed, impatience, disrespect for others, anxiety, depression, hatred, ever-increasing lust, forgetfulness, frustration, dissatisfaction, duplicity, fear of death, and so on. Sound familiar? Just need to open up the news, go down on your YouTube or your Facebook scroll, and this is exactly what you see. Culture of nescience. On the other hand, for a person who cultivates wisdom or true knowledge of his identity and his relationship with God, the results are inner peace, satisfaction, patience, respect for others, freedom from duplicity, compassion, joyfulness, remembrance of his spiritual identity, freedom from the fear of death, freedom from anxiety and depression, and so on. Beautiful. It's really, I want to read those again. And I want you to think about that when you're chanting Krishna's names, when you've been practicing this, and you can compare yourself to when you were cultivating this culture of nescience, as opposed to when you're cultivating a cultivation of knowledge, right? True knowledge. Satisfaction, inner peace. The results are inner peace, satisfaction, patience, respect for others. Freedom from duplicity, respect for others as children of God, regardless of who they are, regardless of if you agree with them politically or whatever, Freedom from duplicity, don't be duplistic. Compassion, you get to be compassionate, to be very compassionate about the lost living entities, as the fact that they are consciously or unconsciously, striving for something that creates great pain and suffering for themselves. Joyfulness, remembrance of his spiritual identity, freedom from the fear of death, which is a big thing, freedom from anxiety and depression, which is also another big thing. So much anxiety and depression. People learned about Krishna, chant Krishna's names, and cultivate the culture of knowledge in their life. What a great world we would actually live in. The negative social results of a society populated primarily by hedonistic people should be obvious to anyone. Yeah. People don't really make that connection because they have a hard time wanting to, I don't know, I think the hedonistic idea is near and dear to people. They see it as some kind of freedom from maybe they were brought up in a particular abusive religion or church or something that was preaching this thing, and then therefore they think, well, this is freedom. I want to do what I want to do, without realizing that the negative social results of society are directly related to this. Social society of self-centered, animalistic people who have no other interest than their own sense enjoyment cannot be at all peaceful or progressive. No, people talk about progressiveness, like I'm a progressive, I'm a democratic socialist, and I'm progressive, and I want all these things, without really realizing that's it's not going to solve our spiritual craving to have electric cars, or to recycle everything, or to, save the whales, or, they don't really, these things are important, but you have to get to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem is this self-centered, mainly a misidentification of who we really are and what our purpose is in this life. On the other hand, the positive results of a society populated mostly by people who are serious about cultivating wisdom and spiritual understanding should be clear. So much more fun to talk about spiritual wisdom and how trying to improve ourselves spiritually and to be humble. And am I crazy? It's like, is this really not enjoyable? If the citizens are peaceful, satisfied, respectful of others, compassionate, selfless, and so on, then society will be progressive, and both materially and spiritually. Yeah, we can live in a materially well-to-do life if we stopped trying to be so self-centered and cutthroat about who has what. The Bhakti Yoga process of cultivating knowledge or wisdom is briefly summarized as follows. So, number one, a person should learn scientifically the distinction between matter and life. He should fully understand through study and meditation that he is not the material body or mind, but that he is in fact the spirit soul within the body. This should be taught in universities, because everything else that they teach would be fully beneficial if we really understood, we can actually cultivate our knowledge to try to have a thriving economic society with the knowledge that it belongs to God. that we put it in, make it in God's service. It's a no-brainer. Number two, a person should meditate upon the reality of his position. Every person is dominated by both natural and social forces. The individual spirit soul is not identical with the all-powerful Supreme Lord. The spirit soul is a dominated part and parcel of God, so all living beings are the children of God. One should cultivate and deepen this understanding. So as we are all spiritual in essence, we're also dominated by God. We are all therefore related truly in the deepest sense as brothers and sisters. Number three, a person should worship the Supreme Personality of God. Such worship centers around hearing and chanting of the names, words, glories, and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. He should engage in devotional activities such as offering his food, flowers, and so on to the deity of the Supreme Person, offering obeisances to the deity and to the spiritual master, and so forth. This goes back to understanding that the the owner and controller is Krishna, and that we are offering in our love to Krishna the things that he's provided for us. The cultivation of knowledge is also commented on by that authoritative text for yogis, the Bhagavad Gita. In its 13th chapter, the Gita tells of a person who is serious about making progress on the path of Bhakti Yoga. This person is instructed as follows. So we get to read this again. This is great. Bhaktivedanta Swami also talked about these. So it's good to hear it again. I'll just read through it without comment. Number 1, one should himself become a perfect gentleman and should learn to give proper respect to others. Number 2, one should not pose himself as a religionist simply for name and fame. Number 3, one should not become a source of anxiety to others by the actions of his body, by the thoughts of his mind, or by his words. Number 4, one should learn forbearance, even in the face of provocation from others. Number 5, one should learn to avoid duplicity in his dealings with others. Number 6, one should search out a bona fide spiritual master who can lead him gradually to the stage of spiritual realization, and one must submit himself to such a spiritual master, render him service, and ask relevant questions. Number 7, in order to approach the platform of self-realization, one must follow the regulative principles enjoined in the revealed scriptures. Number 8, one must be fixed in the tenets of the revealed scriptures. Number 9, one should completely refrain from practices that are detrimental to the interest of self-realization. Number 10, one should not accept more than he requires for the maintenance of the body. Number 11, one should not falsely identify himself with the gross material body, nor consider those who are related to his body to be his own. Number 12, one should always remember that as long as he has a material body, he must face the miseries of repeated birth, old age, diseases, and death. Number 13, one should not be attached to more than the necessities of life required for spiritual advancement. Number 14, one should not be more attached to wife, children, and home than the revealed scriptures ordain. Number 15, one should not be happy or distressed over desirables and undesirables created by the mind. Number 16, one should become an unalloyed devotee of the personality of Godhead and serve him with rapt attention. Number 17, one should develop a liking for residence in a secluded place with a calm and quiet atmosphere favorable for spiritual culture, and one should avoid congested places where non-devotees congregate. One thing I want to point out here is that even if we live in a, maybe a more urban area, it's not an ideally secluded place, we can find parks or places where we can maybe go hike, or there may not be very few people or just no people. We can go, we can cry to Krishna, we can pray to Krishna, take that solitude time to spend with Krishna every day in a secluded place, because being around people, and this is why our solitude practice is to be by ourselves, even if we can't get to a secluded place, to close the door, to go into a closet or something where we can just chant our japa, focused, and spend time with Krishna every day. It's been instructed by our spiritual master to do this as a great way to cultivate your spiritual growth in your life. Number 18, one should become a scientist or philosopher and conduct research into spiritual knowledge, recognizing that spiritual knowledge is permanent, whereas material knowledge ends with the death of the body. So really great. I think I want to type these out and put them on my wall because they're great reminders of, maybe I'll put them in the comments in my YouTube post so you guys can have them too. But just as in reference, that is if you have a Bhagavad Gita as it is in chapter 13, it doesn't really say here what that is, but great mantra. That was awesome. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Namaste.